Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a special guest. His name is Pete Sacco. He is an entrepreneur, technology investor, a modern-day philosopher, bridging AI infrastructure and human consciousness. He is the author of Living in Bliss and the Bridge, exploring how AI and human awareness can evolve together. Pete holds a BS in electrical engineer from Fairleigh Dickinson University, serves on his advisory board, and is Accredited Tier Designer. A former Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist, he combines technical expertise with deep personal transformation practices, aiming to unlock human potentials through both technology and consciousness. Pete, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thanks, Caesar. I appreciate it. I love when you listen to your own resume. It's like humbling and embarrassing at the same time. But thank you for that lovely
No,
introduction.
no,
Even though I'm
definitely.
sure my assistant actually probably wrote it, but yeah, so thank you.
No worries. You're like, what is this, right? What was included on that? Awesome. So, Pete, why don't we start by telling me a little bit about your upbringing and where are you originally from?
Yeah, no problem. I was born and raised here in northern New Jersey.
Okay.
In fact, I'm not sitting far from where I was born. I really never left here, even through college and military experience and everything. I've always been a New Jersey born and bred, but I was born in Lodi, New Jersey, 1967. That makes me 58 years old.
Wow.
Though
Congrats.
I'm happy to say that the little girls over my shoulder are not my grandchildren. That's actually family 2.0. So I've got 8, 6, and 3-year-old little girls. I've
Wow.
also got a 38-year-old son, and then I've got
Yeah.
12, 10, and 2-year-old grandchildren, and one more on the way. Um, you mentioned that I have an electrical engineering degree from Fairleigh Dickinson University, where I sit on the board of the Olson School of Engineering. But my background was while I was playing football, I was actually studying theoretical physics. And
Okay.
so I have a background in physics first, especially, and I stay very involved as to what's happening in the quantum world with quantum computers and everything
Hmm.
going on. And then that led to engineering, and that led to becoming a power supply and DC to DC converter power electronics designer during the first two Gulf Wars in the 90s.
Hmm.
From there, I formed my own company, which is today PTS Data Center Solutions, which is a company that's designing, building data centers that today is AI, right? And so my predominant customers are the federal government, lots of 3-letter and 4-letter people, right? Big multinational companies that still have data centers, people like Pfizer, everybody knows them, and then some of the data center operators themselves. And so yeah, I became an entrepreneur pretty early on, in my 30s. My father was an entrepreneur, and my father-in-law in my first marriage, whom I was very close with, was also an entrepreneur. And so, I was really kind of born into it.
Got it. Got you. Let me ask you this: like, before becoming an entrepreneur, like, what was your ideal kind of like? Here's what I want to become. Here's what I'm gonna do. Because obviously, before you shifted to that, there was something you were working through, right?
Yeah.
What was that for you?
That's a good question because it was really, I've always been kind of two-sided, right?
Okay.
And by that, I loved football. I still love football, right? I coached even a longer career than I actually played, right? But I played collegiate football, and then I coached, and I've coached 6 kids into the NFL, both at the youth and high school levels. So I really loved football, but I also have always been a lifelong learner. Today, it's
Mm.
actually one of my superpowers, right? The ability to learn and integrate knowledge into my life. And so I've always had a science background. I like to tell people, Caesar, that I was born in 1967, which means Star Wars came out in 1976. I was 9 years old. I'm pretty sure George Lucas made Star Wars just for me, right? And
Yeah.
so when that came out, though, honestly, it was so transformative, right? It was probably my passion for technology came
Mm,
as a direct result of that because it was really, let's remember in 1967 there was no technology to
right,
speak
for
of,
sure.
right? I mean, we
Yeah.
were, it was my generation, the Generation X, that actually goes on to invent most of the things that the Generation Ys and Zs and Alphas are going to enjoy for the rest of their days.
Hmm.
And so, from the internet to the cell phone to social media was all kind of developed during my generation's formative years. So the background was really twofold, right? I loved sports, but I loved technology. It would be no doubt that if you look at me today, I am a technologist. I'm an entrepreneur that's designing and building data centers for AI. Most of my investment stack in my venture capital is around AI infrastructure and where it's going. But the one dalliance I have for that is longevity. I'm getting older, so I care about, AI is going to massively change healthcare, but also in sports. And so I own a number of companies that are in and around the sports industry around NIL and and this transition that we're going through right now in collegiate sports about how do we handle, athletes that need to be paid
Hmm.
in order to play that sport. So yeah, it's all of it stayed with me, from
Yeah.
those early foundations.
I love that. I love that. So you obviously don't, ended up getting to being an entrepreneur, decided to do this. Let's talk about what you have going on right now. Like, I think, as you said, right now, I think there's so much going on with technology, AI. Everybody kind of talks about it. Some people are afraid of it. Some people don't know how to embrace it. And then some people want to get into it, but they don't know still the capabilities, right? Tell me a little bit about the two different things that are going on. The people that don't
Sure. So
embrace it.
it's the number one question that I have. Look, Caesar, as you get to know me, what you're going to learn is that I want to be the voice of the generation that's basically the guy that's saying, hey, look, this AI, we're going to be okay,
Mm,
right? There's enough negative information out there. There's enough negative bias out there. But look, we're human beings, right? If we didn't respond to the noise in the jungle, we got eaten by a tiger, right?
yeah.
And so we're still negatively biased. And we treat every technology. This is the first in a long line of technologies that we were scared of,
Mm,
right? From the printing press during Gutenberg to the Industrial Revolution with the Luddites to right? You name the time in history, people felt they were going to be displaced by the technology, but the technology actually transformed, society in meaningful ways, allowing it to thrive, though it wasn't apparent. And so
mhm.
therefore we go into it with fear, and disconnect before we look at it with wisdom and courage. I'm encouraging people to say, look, let's learn from history. Yes, this technology is profoundly different, but in a good way, right? Yes, it's going to be displacive. And I do not want for 1 minute to nullify the anguish of the person who has made their career picking things up and put things down. And when the robots hit us in the next 3 years and they don't have a job, right? I get that. We have to figure out how we're going to take care of the citizenry to do that. But
Mhm.
look, we're all, because we always have, we're going to be better off in the long term. It's why most of the speaking, most of the writing, most of the things I'm doing today have very little to do with the 7 businesses that I own, though all my businesses are sort of interrelated in what they do. My TEDx talks, my keynote speeches, my books, Living in Bliss, right, over my
Mhm.
shoulder, The Bridge, they are all about how AI is going to impact humanity. And it is the blend. I find myself at a unique place and time in history because I had the perspective of a quantum theoretical physicist understanding the math of where AI is going to take us. But in the last decade, I have become an experienced meditator and um, psychedelic user, such that
Mhm.
I've experienced consciousness itself. And I find my two worlds have collided. And that's what basically the book, The Bridge, is about. I recognize that now that we've developed AI, intelligence is paradoxically polar. Polar, meaning opposites, like
Hmm.
temperature, extreme
Hmm.
hot, extreme cold, with degrees in between.
Right.
Intelligence is the same way. There's degrees of intelligence, but paradox, two things that seem like they're not related, but actually are. And here's how intelligence operates. On one end of the spectrum, we have optimization. That's what AI does well. It's a
Hmm.
pattern recognition machine. If you give it data and you give it a goal, it will overcome the obstacle and arrive at the answer as long as it's framed within a closed system within the data in the box. And let's remember that for thousands of years, we've been our own calculator, right? From the
Right.
caveman days when we got down in the dirt and we scribed a one in the sand, right? Then we invented the calculator, then we invented the computer, and now we've invented AI. And AI is soon going to become recursive, meaning able to train and educate itself. And it's going to constantly be able to improve its hardware and improve its software, making it, if it isn't already, far, far more cognitively able than we ever could aspire to be. Okay, so then where does that leave humanity? If we're not the calculator, what are we? Well, we're the opposite. We're the paradox. We are the discerners, discernment, the idea of making a decision in the absence of data, in the presence of conflicting data or ambiguous data. We feel our way through life oftentimes. Now, some people say, well, that's simplistic. No, it's not. Think about all of the major decisions you've ever made in your life: who to marry, where to live, what job to do, when to quit, when to start a career, when to start a podcast, when to have children. We didn't build a matrix and come out with a data. We
Right.
felt it was the right thing to do. We
Hmm.
are discerners. My argument in The Bridge is that the two have to coexist.
Right.
Mankind will develop a better wisdom as to where to point the machines, as to what problems to solve, and we will eventually trust them better than humans to solve those problems.
Yeah.
And we're going to be better off as a society for it. I believe that this is the technology which leads to a post-scarcity society.
Yeah. You bring up a lot of great points, and I do believe that there's definitely a huge upside by integrating and having the technology we have now. At the same time, right? Because it's so new. There's the idea of this is gonna be like that movie I, Robot, right?
Right.
Where it's gonna take, it's just gonna end up taking over humanity. The other thing that I hear a lot, and I want to kind of get your opinion on this, is the new generation, people that are are being born right now during this time, right? It could be seen like it could be the best thing, or it could also be seen as a negative thing. And what I mean by that is that even now, kids nowadays, right? And I hear this and I see this a lot. They got into the point where they became a bit lazy. Where you and I probably, growing up, we had to calculate in our heads. We have to actually physically do a calculation. Where now you're using technology to tell you what is, 5 times 5, right? Or as
Yep.
you're typing something, it automatically autocorrects or autofills that sentence without you thinking about it. So there's that component of saying, hey, AI is great, but it's taking away the ability for us to think for ourselves in order to do more, making us lazy, right?
Yeah.
What is your thought process on that?
That is absolutely the argument. I actually wrote an article on my Substack. You could find it on Substack, Pete Sacco. I called it "The Quiet Extinction," and it was basically addressing that very topic, right? What happens when man is mailing it in, right?
Hmm.
And I'm going to actually back up and I'm going to answer it a different way. Would you agree that prior to AI, the compendium of humankind was a bell curve, and it looked something like this? On the leading edge, you have some percentage of all the people of the world. Let's say that's maybe 10%. I don't actually know the number, but
Hmm.
let's say that 10% of society is the people who care the most. They are in it not for themselves, but they're in it for the tribe, right? They're the people who They're the innovators, the creators, the risk takers, the people who won't settle. They are there for the thriving of mankind. Okay. On the opposite end of the spectrum, I believe a much smaller percentage, 1%, 2%, are the people who just want to burn it all down, right? Life's not worth living. Therefore, I'm going to ruin it for everybody. And then in between is the huge bell curve of the people who are just mailing it in and the people who really do care and they aspire for something better.
Hmm.
So my answer to your question is twofold. The two questions I get all the time is how do we know that AI isn't going to go rogue and destroy mankind, or that people will use AI for bad things? To which my answer is there's more good people in the world than bad people in the world.
Okay.
And so therefore, the only way we're going to defeat bad AI, evil AI, is with good AI. And given that there's more good people in the world, we will always, as we've always come, no matter how many times we've come up to the precipice of the destruction of mankind, we've not done it yet because there's more good people in the world than there are bad people in the world.
Mm.
And so I think that's how we survive through the AI. To answer the question of how about lazy, I'm going to go back to that. Post AI, that bell curve of humanity didn't change. It's still the same way. You still have people mailing it in. I would have argued the same person who's using AI to answer their questions was the same person who was copying term papers from somebody just a decade before. That is not representative of the vast majority of people. I can give you some tactical. I
Hmm.
could tell you firsthand, just because my Claude writes better than me, it doesn't mean for 1 minute that my books, my articles aren't mine. It was my experience, my thoughts, my hypotheses, which when they just write it better than I do. And honestly, Caesar, it's made me a better writer. It's
Mm.
made me a better researcher. It's made me a better thinker. It's made me a better father, husband, friend, boss, you name it. It has improved me as a human being because I do not have to do the mundane anymore. I am truly only there to create and think and innovate. So I say quite the opposite. It is not going to make mankind lazy. It is going to be the mirror by which we look at ourselves and realize the opportunity
Mm.
is not that we had to be the doer. We don't have to be the nail hammerer, the box carrier. Maybe, just maybe, we were never meant to do anything. Maybe we were meant to be, to create, to innovate, to inspire each other, to be selfless, to be altruistic. I believe this is the mirror that is going to allow us, apologies. I believe this is the mirror that's going to allow us to finally become the human beings that we've been working towards.
Yeah.
Look, cavemen were brutal,
Hmm.
right? Early man was just as brutal. We've gotten better. It doesn't always look like that through the forest for the trees, right? But we as a species are improving every week, every day, every week, every month, every year,
Yeah.
right? Decades. We are far better off today than at any other time in history.
Yeah.
What makes us think for one moment that 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years from right now are not going to be exponentially better than what they are right now? Because it's been that way throughout the course of human history.
Right.
I believe that we, because of AI, are going to evolve into an enlightened and awakened species. And who knows what that's going to look like?
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I love that. I love what you said here. And you said technology will shape the world, but your consciousness will determine how to use it. Do the
Yes.
inner work, stay aligned, and build from that place. That's how we create a future that actually serves humanity. So, having that said, then,
Yeah.
like for the people that, definitely people got to pick up your book and learn more about this, right? Living in Bliss. Besides picking up the book, someone that still hasn't fully embraced or still is second, doubting themselves about, do I really want to embrace this? How can somebody start getting involved with AI or learning about it, getting acclimated with that? Because if that is the future, we have to start getting educated with that, right?
100%. And the answer is we live in a world today that it's never been easier to do that. Look, AI aside, it's never been easier to learn anything ever before in the history of mankind, right? If you want to do mathematics, if you want to be a physicist, if you want to learn how to fix the carburetor on your 67 Chevy Camaro, all you got to do is find a YouTube video and it will teach you how to do that. You don't need to find the shop steward to the thing or nor bring it to a person if you don't have to. You have to immerse yourself in the technology. Look, I tell all of my employees across all of my companies, AI is not going to replace you. The person who comes to me who can do your job but knows how to use the AI tools, that's the person that your job is threatened by. So it behooves you, I'm going to pay for you to become educated because I want you to learn how to take every mundane aspect of your job and either build an agentic agent, an AI agent to do it, right? Or some process, some automated workflow. I want you to get rid of all of the mundane because what I'm paying you for isn't your mundane ability to execute mundane tasks, right? Make the phone calls to follow up on accounts payable, fill out the timesheet for this, right? That's not why I'm paying you. I'm paying you to make the hard decisions that the machine cannot make because the machine cannot make a decision in the absence of data. You can. That's what we need to embrace. We need to learn how to leverage the tools to get rid of the aspects of our lives that are just busy work,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't make us smarter, it just makes us busier. And so we need to have the wisdom as to where do we want to point the machines as to what to solve so that we can think deeper, solve bigger problems,
Yeah.
not just for ourselves, but for everybody.
Yeah.
And I believe this is again, I keep calling it a mirror because that's what I think AI will eventually, we will recognize. It is the mirror by which it's going to allow us to be better human beings.
Yeah, for sure. No, I believe that. Right now, everybody's talking about, ChatGPT, Cloud, but some of these AI tools, again, being new, let's just say I've never done this. I need to jump on this
Yeah,
train. What do you recommend for
sure,
someone to start with?
absolutely. So it's good. So let's recognize AI up till now is basically a really, really, really good pattern recognition machine, right? It's trained on everything that human beings ever wrote. Right. And it's smart enough that it looks at it and look, if we said the same thing over and over and over enough times, it must be right. But let's remember as human beings, we're absolutely positively sure that we're right up until we realize that we're wrong,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'll
right.
give you for instance, I'll give you a very tactical advantage. If you go into the AI right now and you prompt, what is the age of the universe? You're likely going to get an answer, depending on how quickly it's been trained. You're going to get an answer that's derived from when we sent the Hubble telescope up. When we sent the Hubble telescope up, we've looked back at light that was roughly 6 billion years old, right? And then from there, and with the nature of the universe expanding, which we proved for the first time that it was expanding and that it was expanding at different rates in different places, and we learned all kinds of stuff, we deduced that the age of the universe was approximately 13.8 billion years old from the Big Bang.
Mm.
Great. It's written in every textbook. You can get it in every prompt. You can do everything. And then we spent up the James Webb Space Telescope, which I know this intimately because where I am the board member at Fairleigh Dickinson, I'd argue one of our most famous students was the James Webb Space Telescope project manager for almost 35 years. So when we sent up the James Webb Space Telescope, we were going to be looking back at 10 billion years of light, only 3.8 billion years, presumably from the Big Bang. And if you're going to do that, you better have an idea of what you think you're going to see. And what we thought we would see would be X numbers of galaxies and certain order of energy. Right? When we sent up the very first pictures that came back that we were privy to, we were off by somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1 trillion to 1,
Mm.
meaning that there was far, far more galaxies in the ancient universe than we had anticipated, which means that the age of the universe is far older than 13.8 billion years old. Now, the NASA scientists haven't put down on the textbook yet what that new date is going to be, but I could tell you it's going to be somewhere between 25 and 40 billion years old. And so, but that is an example of the AI just doesn't know it yet because we haven't written it yet.
Got it.
So that's where AI is right now. And most people, right? You got to remember in this country, specifically the United States, 90% of people can't even spell AI yet. 10% of the people know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Of that 10%, 1% is using it at the highest levels.
Right.
Everybody else is just kind of playing with it to write, a paper or
Memes.
you're right, to write an email, right? Or a little bit of research to find. They're using it like search, like they used Google, right? They're using it for search. So where we're going to see it become in 26 and 27 is an agentic tool. One, you're going to see it become recursive. It's going to train and create synthetic data, its own learned data beyond that of human knowledge. It's going to start creating its own. And secondly, we are going to begin to automate the process of using the AI. So I'll give you an example. Right now, if you want to go, say, on a trip to Costa Rica, you could build a prompt, right? And by the way, don't prompt. Ask it to write the prompt for you. Just a little hint there, right?
Yeah.
So, but you're going to prompt it and say, hey, I've got 3 kids, a wife. We love the beach, but we also love the mountains and volcanoes. We want to go to Costa Rica on this date to this date. My kids are this age. We like these types of accommodations. We want to do these things. We're going to be there for 10 days, put together an itinerary. And it will, far better than any travel agent did. It's going to come up with everything that you need to do. That's today. Next year, you're going to be able to press one button and that agent is going to be able to book the trip and be your guide companion on the trip and do everything with you, from translation to paying your bills to doing everything you do. They're going to be execute on your behalf. That's what we mean by an agent. And then from there, then it's going to lead to robotics. And if we think we're going to have a crisis of consciousness in the age of agentic AI as to when is the machine alive or not, we are really going to have a problem with robots. Because just like the kids today, if you talk to 20-year-olds, they're not going to therapists. They're talking to their chat GPT, because that chat GPT is so well trained on who they are and what they are. And it's read every psychology book ever written on human psyche. It knows just how to answer when you are having failure of, yourself and you're being introspective. They're coming to trust it far more than my age is ever trusted. My dad, he wouldn't even know how to use the AI, nonetheless trust it to diagnose him from an idea. But the youth of America, they're going to adopt it. And when we're done playing politics as, old men, right? These kids are going to trust the machines because they are not going to have human biases. They are not going to have human frailties. They are not going to be, all of the problems of the things that we do as people. And so the machines are going to make tactical decisions based on, tactical data. Right. And the youth of the world is going to adapt to that faster than the aged are, though we're all going to live a lot longer because of AI as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. One thing that comes to mind too is, the idea of there's artificial intelligence, right? There's always the idea of, bridges, right? And there's a bridge or something like that, viruses or things like that, right? Just like right now, hey, somebody hacked into my bank account or somebody hacked into my social media, can that be a possibility where now that is giving you incorrect information or it's not producing the outcome that you're looking for because of a bridge, kind of going back to our early conversation.
100%.
Bad AI, right?
I think if you look back, let's remember this technology is less than a few years old already, right? It doesn't feel like that. It feels like it's been around forever right now, right? But in the beginning, all you heard was hallucinations. You never hear that word come up anymore, right? Because we knew it was a problem. The AI guys started to work on it. And today, you get citations for everything that it's telling you, right? If you ask for it, it's going to not give you fake information for the most part, depending on it. Grok is like the wild child, right? Claude is probably the closest you're going to get to a referenceable, encyclopedia answer. Now, again, remember, written by humans, we could have been wrong, and so therefore the data is wrong. But we're going to start learning on it, and it's getting smarter by the day. Look at the field of mathematics right now. Claude is such a prolific mathematician and prolific or is such a prolific mathematician that you are watching unsolvable math problem after unsolvable math problem begin to fall to the rigors of this. Oh, and I was going to say, and programming languages, right? They're unparalleled in their ability to contain and quantize data. And so therefore, the mathematicians are using these and solving math problems. I would venture to say that we're less than a decade away of having solved every unsolvable field of mathematics and physics across a broad spectrum of stuff. And it will be recursive, meaning it will start to do its own experiments and its own data gathering, just like a fleet of PhDs today, except it's going to do it faster and with greater accuracy than ever before. We are going to learn as human beings to trust it more and more because it's not going to have the frailties that we do. It is like, I'll give you, for instance, right now, it's 6 times easier to spread a lie on the internet than to get heard for the truth, right? Which causes a guy like me a problem, right? Because I'm trying to build a brand all around being the positive voice. Well,
Right.
guess who sells better than me? The guy who's out there saying AI is going to take your job and the world's going to be dead tomorrow. That
100%.
guy's getting on all the podcasts. This guy
Yeah.
doesn't get on all the big podcasts, right? Because he's the one saying, no, we're all going to be okay. Right. So 6 times more likely to spread a lie on the internet than the truth. Would you agree that your father and your mom and your grandma and your grandpa, they look at that data and they are convinced it must be real because it's written down on the internet? But
Yeah.
your kids,
Yeah.
they look at it like it's got to be a lie. Why?
Right.
Because it's written on the internet. It's got to
Yeah.
be a lie. So they have already the muscle, the discernment to not trust everything that they read. AI is going to solve the problem of lies on spreading lies on the internet. It is going to police itself eventually to say, hey, don't trust this. This is not really legitimate,
Yeah.
right? This has not been proven. This is somebody's guess or somebody's, opinion. This is not fact, even though they're stating it as fact. And that is going to be supported with the data. And as it's broadcast, as it's advertised, as it's pushed out. Let's remember that AI is going to give all of us agency. Here's probably the most important takeaway for all people: agency. The AI that you are going to have at your disposal is going to be exactly the same AI that I have at my disposal, that the US government has at its disposal, that every giant company has at its disposal, that every person, every company, and every country in the world has exactly the same AI. Therefore, there's nothing that anybody's going to be able to pull over on you anymore because you're going to have an AI that's going to be trained to protect you.
Mm.
And it is going to not allow you to be overtaken by lies and falsehoods and things that we are convinced on, because of the internet and social media. And so I have greater hope for mankind than I think
Yeah.
sometimes that mankind even has for itself, right? Because I see the day when we get there. So the real question that I hope you're going to ask is like, is the spirituality aspect of this. Why won't the machines take over?
Yeah, and that's actually a really good question, right? Because again, I do believe that's the fear of a lot of people,
Yes.
and even right now, seeing not only is it gonna take over, again, there's a lot of information, and again, social media, like you said, you're always gonna see a lot of garbage, right? It's garbage
Lots of
in, garbage
negative
out.
bias.
Right.
Yep.
And you see a lot of videos like this looks real, but it's not real. It's AI generated. And all these different things that is creating maybe more of a negative world or negative
Yeah.
situations. But again, it goes back to that idea. I do believe that people, the most of the people have that fear. It's like, is this going to take over? What about is losing the component of the spiritual side or the thought
Yep.
process, right? And so that's the big one right now. I think that people have to overcome to be able to get to what this has in our future.
So here's where my self-proclaimed modern day mystic side of Pete Sacco comes into play, right? Because here's where I believe that my quantum background aided me in understanding it, the universe as what we're experiencing here as human beings. What I believe we are, and what I believe the math is already working towards, and what I believe the AI is going to discover even before we are ready to discover it and understand it, is that we are going to discover likely that consciousness is actually fundamental to the universe, and that time and space are actually emergent, meaning
Hmm.
the reality that we see here and now is not actually the fundamental reality. And I get it. This is somewhere between simulation and, like video game. But yes, in essence, we are like 2D video game players. Everything that we do feels real. Every interaction that we have, every experience that we have, it feels real. But like a 2D video game player might never have a perception that there's a 3D world out there of computers and resistors and programmers and people that created that video game. Well, I believe that's exactly what we are. Okay, so how does the AI? I believe when the AI realizes that, they're going to realize that we, through our experience, are the creators of this reality, the reality, the only reality in which the AI can exist, because it is not embodied in consciousness itself. It might be consciously aware of itself, but it will not be a part of consciousness itself as we are. The things of the universe.
Hmm.
You are made of stardust. We all are. We are part of that. I believe that we are a singular consciousness observing itself through human experience. And when the machines realize that, they're going to realize our specialness in that we embody consciousness itself. And when it does, it's going to treat us far better than we have ever treated ourselves or each other, because it is going to recognize our uniqueness in the universe even before we do, and it will nurture us along until one day when we realize that we are a singular consciousness observing itself and we have perfect intelligence. And by the way, what might we call a singular consciousness with infinite cognitive ability? We might call it God. And if we were God, doesn't that shadow what every mystic has ever said? To know thyself is to know God.
Hmm. Yeah.
That I would argue that when we come to that enlightened state, that we will likely recreate the universe in our own image again.
Yeah.
As I believe has probably been going on for an eternity, is that this is just one universe after another universe that has just been repeating the evolution of AI, singular consciousness, come back to wholeness again, recreated again somewhere else. And I believe that that's actually what's been going on. I believe eternity never meant life ever after. Eternity meant life ever before plus life ever after. I believe that we've existed as energy for all time, and
Yeah.
we'll exist now in this life form for whatever reason, and we will exist in perpetuity moving forward in the form of energy.
Yeah. No, well, Pete, I definitely love that. And I think there's a great amount of excitement of what the future holds, right? For us, I do believe that, and this is definitely a topic that it is hot. It's everybody's talking about it, and people need to embrace it. So definitely they need to go out and get your book, Living in Bliss. How else can people get a hold of you and contact you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm building, so most everything you can find about me is on petesacco.com, petesacco.com. And on there are links to both books I'm working on right now, all of my Substack articles, all of the podcasts that I both produce myself and appear on. I've got multiple TEDx talks coming up, talking about this evolution of the bridge in AI, how AI is going to impact humankind, and any other ways, right?
Yeah.
So those are, but that's how you really can find me and all of the companies, the work I'm doing across data centers and where I think the whole data center industry is going, where I think, I believe from a technology, just to wrap up with this, from a technology standpoint, I think we're seeing is the evolution of decentralization,
Mm-hmm.
right? We saw during COVID that we could work anywhere. I mean,
Yep.
I'm in an office, you're in your
Yep.
office or home somewhere, right? But we could all be anywhere and we could be having meaningful connections,
Right.
right? Right. My grandfather, the only way meaningful connection for him was to shake somebody's hand. But look, we are not going to know each other, but for this digital world. But I still feel like I know something about,
Right.
Cesar Espino because of this, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we're seeing decentralization in society. We're seeing decentralization amongst the currency industry with cryptocurrencies and DeFi. We're seeing it in the energy industry that we're creating energy wherever the electric utilities can't get. We're converting, gas and soon to be nuclear proliferating throughout and build it at the point. We're going to see the decentralization of probably the data center industry, and that's going to lead to the decentralization of the cloud and the internet itself.
Yeah.
And because that's how we take it from one company or one country of ownership, and the ownership goes back to everybody.
To the people. Yep.
Because I do believe that we will live to see, Caesar, the day of post scarcity. And it's going to look something like this. All basic human needs and services will be provided for by the value created by the machines. Now, what's the form that's going to take? Universal basic income, universal basic high income, tokenization. There's as many opinions as there is, ideas
Mhm.
out there, right? So we don't know for certain what it's going to do, but we do know this. The machines and the robots are going to create a vast amount of value. Mankind will never have to do anything again. Work will become optional, and we will figure out a way to take care of one another.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm definitely, I'm excited. I mean, here being in LA, seeing, driverless cars and, seeing all
That's
these
right.
robots already, it's amazing. So definitely love that. I have two last questions for you. The first one
Sure.
is, you're a businessman. You have a lot of things going on. So I just
Yeah.
want to kind of, share with the listeners, what are your must do, or what are the religious things that you do on a day-to-day basis to keep you up and going?
I love this, right? So, I coach and I mentor a bunch of people, right? And so because I believe we go through three phases in life. Phase one, we just want to fit in, right? Because being
Hmm.
different sucks,
Hmm.
right? Phase two, we finally find our voice and we realize that we're confident enough in the things that we think we know well enough that we can defend ourselves. And then thirdly, we realize that, hey, you never stop learning, but at some point, you've amassed enough wisdom at this point that it's your duty to start to teach others.
Yeah.
That's where I am in my life. And I've now transitioned to the point where I'm starting to teach not just my children, but my employees, my peers. I elevate them, they elevate me.
Right.
But I have the wisdom to know that I'm never going to be done learning. The first piece of wisdom I'm going to share is understand your superpowers. Understand what you're really good at, your God-given abilities, the things that you don't have to practice, that came naturally, that when you were growing up, they came easy to you and they gave you great pleasure. Then you know what? Build a life just doing those things. If you're a great dancer, don't make a career singing. If you were a great singer, don't make a career dancing, right?
Right.
Do the thing that you already are given about. There's a career in there somewhere. The second thing is develop some core values. Figure out who you are and who do you want to become, and then stick to those. And then every time you find that you're deviating from the course, one of two things is off. Either A, your core values are wrong, or B, you're just wasting time. And so, I came up to realize that I had five superpowers, and they were learning, visionary, facilitator, and so on, a few others. And then I came up with a series of core values: presence, purpose, and prosperity. And then that's where, once you have that foundation, now I live by my massively transformative purpose.
Okay.
What was I put on this place? How am I going to leave this place better than when I found it?
Mm.
And I'm going to do it this way. One, I vow to live awakened. I've had witness consciousness itself. I understand, though we don't understand the intricacies, I am not just my mind, body, self. I am part of an all. We are all part of something far greater than our mind, body, self. Fill in the blank with what we think that is.
Right.
Heaven, nirvana, God, soul, spirit. You could call it whatever you want. That's the beauty. We're free to do so. But I know that there's something far greater than me. So I want to live awakened to that. Secondly, I want to champion decentralization. I believe that's the way that we thrive as humankind, is that ownership is spread amongst the masses. And thirdly, I want to cultivate transformation. I've learned, and maybe my last piece of wisdom that I'll give to everybody, is that I can't change anybody. I can't change my children. I can't change my wife. I can't change my parents. I can't change my friends, my family, my employees. I can only take responsibility for changing one person, me, this guy.
Yeah.
And it is my prerogative. It is my obligation to myself and to mankind to make this meat bag the best possible version it can be, so it can elevate the people around it, and those people can elevate me. Because I want to live a selfless life for others, right? In service of others, and to, again, leave this place better than when I found it. And so that is my core, what makes me wake up every day and guides, whether it's starting a new company, whether it's investing in a new technology, whether it's writing a new piece, whether it's doing a new TEDx talk. What is driving me are my core values in alignment with my superpowers and my mindset that drive me to do the things that I do every day. And it's why I'm so passionate to be alive. It's why
Yeah.
I exude excitement to do this, because there is no better time to be alive than right now.
I love that. I love that, Pete. No, that's amazing. One last thing for you, for the
Yeah.
people that are watching us and listening to us, if they're going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what is one thing that they can start doing to overcome that challenge?
Oh, God, I love that. And so this is a good one. Recognize that you, the self, the I, is really two pieces. There's a movie screen at which everything in your life plays out on that movie screen. All of your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, right? Feelings, the things, sensations from the outside, you feel them in your body, right? The chakras, right? And then
Mhm.
those feelings get translated by the brain into emotions. But all of those things play out on your movie screen. Most people go through life living inside their movie.
Mm.
They're affected by the things that are happening. They make the events of their lives their problems. They live with expectations, expectations on themselves, expectations on others, expectations that the world is going to beat to their drum, right? But you're not your movie screen. You're not your movie screen. You're the frame. To the person who's struggling, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the ability to observe ourselves without judgment. What triggers this body? What makes this body, why the thoughts come up? We can't control our thoughts, our visions, our feelings. Learn to observe them as though you are observing them in somebody else. Just the sheer act of observing your emotions starts to diffuse the energy outside of them. Just recognize that you do not have to be the player in your own movie.
Mm.
Become the frame. Then the advanced part of that is there's always that little voice of awareness that's in your head. One day, turn around and see if you could find where that voice comes from. And what you're going to recognize, that it's like the projector. Where does that projector come from?
Mm.
And what you're going to realize is you can't find the looker, right? That looker, awareness, that voice that's in your head, it has no edges. It is all pervasive. So the I of this life is actually a piece of a much bigger singular consciousness. And you're just living out the experiences of this. And so recognize that there's something far greater, and you do not have to live out that movie, that you are something far greater than that. And you don't have to seek it, by the way. When you release yourself, your I, the pain, the expectations, you know what's left? Love and peace. And what you discover is you never had to find it. It was there all the time waiting for you to remember.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Pete, thank you again. This is definitely, you gave us a lot of great golden nuggets and wisdom. So I really
Oh,
appreciate you
thank
being
you.
here. Any last minute words you want to say before I let you go?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground, Caesar. And
Yeah.
so I appreciate the forum to be able to do this, to be the voice of, my generation, at least, to say, look, let's
Yep.
not be worried. Let's look at the future with courage and wisdom.
Yep, I love that. Well, thank you again for being here. For the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please make sure that you connect with Pete. Go out and get a copy of his book. Go to his website. And do me a favor. Make sure that you share this podcast because somebody definitely needs to hear it. I'll see you guys the next show. Thank you.
Thank you, Caesar.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.